This wasn't supposed to happen, not to him, not like this. Because when 50 Cent decided to tease a segment from his upcoming documentary, the assumption was simple: he was in control. He was the one pulling the strings, shaping the narrative, deciding what the world would see and when they would see it. That's always been his lane. Calculated, strategic, intentional. But within hours of that teaser surfacing, something shifted. Not publicly at first, but behind the scenes, quietly, almost invisibly. What started as low whispers turned into urgent messages. Then came talk of a clip, short, chaotic, unsettling. And just like that, the story changed. It wasn't about a documentary anymore. It was about an incident. According to early, unverified reports circulating online, 50 Cent was allegedly involved in a situation described by insiders as more than random. Words like targeted started appearing. Phrases like not a coincidence began spreading across forums and private chats. Nothing officially confirmed, nothing verified by credible sources. But the timing, that's what made people pause. Because this all unfolded just hours after that leaked clip began gaining traction. A clip that, according to those who claimed to have seen it, wasn't just promotional. It was provocative, suggestive, loaded with subtext. Allegedly referencing past conflicts, hinting at buried stories, possibly pointing in directions that certain people wouldn't want attention drawn toward. And that's where the tension begins. Because if there's one thing the entertainment industry understands better than anything, it's narrative control. Who tells the story matters. How it's told matters even more. And when someone like 50 Cent starts digging into sensitive territory, people notice. They always have. For years, his brand hasn't just been about music or television. It's been about exposure, calling things out, bringing attention to uncomfortable truths. Whether it's industry dynamics, personal feuds, or behind-the-scenes tensions, he's built a reputation around saying what others might avoid. Fearless on the surface. But that kind of approach doesn't exist in a vacuum. It creates pressure. Because every time you reveal something, question something, or even hint at something, someone somewhere feels it. And not everyone reacts calmly to that kind of attention. That's what makes this moment feel different. Because this wasn't just another social media jab. This wasn't a quick post or a passing comment that would fade in a day or two. This was a project, a documentary, something structured, something lasting. Something that could shape perception long-term. And according to speculation, that documentary wasn't light. Insiders had already been hinting for months that 50 Cent was working on something deeper than usual. Something layered with industry politics, unresolved conflicts, and stories that had never fully made it into the public space. At first, it sounded like typical hype. Rumors come and go. But then the pattern started forming. Cryptic posts, old clips resurfacing, captions that didn't explain much but hinted at everything. They thought this was over. Truth always finds its way out. Subtle but deliberate. And then came the leak. No rollout, no announcement, just a clip dropped suddenly, circulating quickly, and then disappearing just as fast. But not before it was seen. Not before it was recorded. Not before it started conversations. According to those early viewers, the footage wasn't neutral. It didn't feel like a standard teaser. It felt pointed, carefully edited but intentionally suggestive. Not naming names outright, but leaving just enough breadcrumbs for people to start connecting dots. And once those dots started connecting, everything accelerated. Fans began speculating. Forums lit up. Group chats exploded. But more importantly, attention shifted behind the scenes. Because fans weren't the only ones watching that clip. And according to unverified insider chatter, not everyone was comfortable with what it implied. Some reactions were described as concern, others as frustration, and a few reportedly as anger. Now, to be clear, none of this has been officially confirmed. There are no verified reports linking the alleged incident to the documentary teaser, no statements proving retaliation, no concrete evidence connecting those dots. But speculation doesn't need confirmation to spread. It just needs timing. And this timing, it felt too precise for some people to ignore. Because think about it. A controversial clip surfaces, hinting at sensitive topics. It gains traction quickly. Then suddenly, an unrelated but serious situation is rumored to have happened involving the same person who released that clip. Even without proof, the narrative almost writes itself. Coincidence or consequence? That's the question driving everything right now. Some believe this is being overblown, that the alleged incident, if it even happened, the way it's being described has nothing to do with any documentary, that the internet is doing what it always does, connecting unrelated events into a single dramatic storyline. And to be fair, that's not impossible. But others aren't so quick to dismiss it. They point to the pattern. Because this isn't the first time 50 Cent has stirred controversy. Over the years, he's been involved in multiple public feuds, some loud, some subtle, but all very visible. Names have been called out. Stories have been challenged. Reputations have been tested. And while most of those moments stayed within the boundaries of media and entertainment, they still created tension. Real tension. So when you take that history, add a documentary rumored to expose deeper layers of the industry, and then place an alleged incident right after a provocative leak, you get a situation that feels bigger than coincidence, even if it is. That's the power of perception. Right now, the internet is divided. One side sees strategy, a calculated rollout designed to generate attention, create urgency, and pull viewers into a narrative before the full project even drops. Because let's be honest, controversy drives engagement. Engagement drives viewership. And viewership drives relevance. From that perspective, everything happening right now, even the speculation, is part of the momentum. But the other side sees risk. They see someone pushing boundaries in an environment where boundaries matter, where exposing the wrong thing at the wrong time can lead to consequences that go beyond headlines and trending topics. And whether that's true or not, the idea alone is enough to make people uneasy. Because the entertainment industry might look like content on the surface, but behind it, it's power, relationships, and control. And when those elements are disrupted, reactions can be unpredictable. So now we're left in a space where nothing is fully confirmed, but everything feels possible. No official statements have clarified what actually happened. No verified reports have confirmed the alleged incident as described. No one has directly connected the dots. And yet the conversation keeps growing. Because uncertainty fuels attention. And attention keeps the story alive. So here's where things stand. A documentary teaser drops, provocative, suggestive, and quickly removed. Speculation builds around what it might reveal. Then almost immediately, rumors of an incident begin circulating, unverified but intense. And now, the internet is trying to make sense of it all. Was this just a coincidence that got amplified by timing? Was it a calculated move that worked exactly as intended? Or is there something deeper happening that hasn't fully surfaced yet? Right now, there are more questions than answers. And until something concrete emerges, an official statement, verified footage, or credible reporting, that's where things will stay. But one thing is clear. This situation has already done something powerful. It shifted the narrative. Because what started as a documentary rollout has turned into a conversation about control, risk, and the cost of exposure, and whether that shift was intentional or accidental. That might be the most important question of all. This is where the story takes a darker turn, and where everything starts to feel less like coincidence and more like escalation. Because according to one insider, the tension didn't begin with the clip going viral. It started before that, quietly, subtly, in ways the public would never see. There were warnings, not public statements, not direct threats you could screenshot and share, but messages, the kind that don't need to be spelled out, the kind that carry weight without explanation, short, controlled, and unmistakably clear. Stop. That was the message. And if there's one thing people know about 50 Cent, it's this: he doesn't stop. He leans in. He pushes further. He tests the boundary instead of respecting it. And maybe that's exactly what led to what happened next. Because just hours after that documentary snippet began circulating, something shifted. The noise faded. The activity slowed. Social media posts became less frequent. Communication, at least publicly, went quiet. Then the reports started. At first, they were easy to ignore. Scattered posts, anonymous claims, no sources, no confirmation, the kind of chatter that usually disappears as quickly as it appears. But this time it didn't, because the details started lining up. Different accounts, same timeline, same core claim that 50 Cent had been approached, confronted, and that what started as a tense interaction escalated fast. No one can agree on the exact location. Some say it happened outside a private venue. Others claim it was near a studio. A few suggest it occurred during a brief moment when he wasn't surrounded by his usual team, just a small window of vulnerability. But across every version of the story, one detail remains consistent. This wasn't random. And it wasn't just about taking something. Because while early reports mention items being stolen, there's another layer that keeps coming up, something more deliberate, more focused. The situation, according to these accounts, turned physical quickly, not drawn out, not chaotic in a random way, just sudden. A shift. And then it was over. But by that point, whatever message was meant to be sent had already landed. Now here's what has people on edge. Since that moment, there's been silence. No immediate statement, no detailed clarification, no direct acknowledgement breaking down exactly what happened. Just fragments, leaks, rumors, speculation, circulating in the absence of anything official. And the longer that silence continues, the louder the questions become. What really happened? And more importantly, what was in that documentary clip that could trigger something like this? Because if the timing is more than coincidence, if that leak really did set something off, then whatever 50 Cent is working on might be bigger than anyone expected, and possibly more sensitive than anyone realized. This is where the narrative shifts again. Because once more consistent details started surfacing, the story stopped feeling like rumor and started feeling like an incident people were trying to piece together in real time. According to multiple overlapping accounts, the situation unfolded late at night, a low-key moment, no cameras, no crowd, no media presence, just a small gap in routine. And that's when it happened. Witness descriptions, again, unverified but strikingly similar, say it didn't start aggressively, not immediately. It began as an interaction, a group approaching, words exchanged, tension but controlled. For a moment, then something changed. The tone shifted, the energy tightened, and within seconds, what started as conversation allegedly turned physical. No warning, no buildup. Just impact. That's the part that keeps repeating in every version of the story, the speed, how fast it escalated, how quickly control was lost. But here's where things get even more unsettling. Because the original narrative, that this was a robbery, started falling apart almost as quickly as it formed. Why? Because of what was taken and what wasn't. According to insider claims, some personal items were missing, but not the obvious ones, not the high-value targets you'd expect in a random robbery, not the things people usually go for. Instead, it was selective, specific, almost like whoever was involved knew exactly what they were looking for. And that's when everything started pointing back to the documentary. Because just hours earlier, that clip had surfaced, allegedly containing references, hints, and fragments of something bigger, something unfinished, something not meant for public release yet. So the question changed. It was, why did this happen? It became, what were they trying to get? And that's when the most chilling detail emerged. According to one source close to the situation, the individuals involved weren't just trying to take items. They were asking about something specific. A drive. Not cash, not jewelry. A drive. Let that sink in for a second. Because if that detail is even partially true, it reframes everything. We don't know what was on it. There's no confirmation it even existed in the way it's being described. But given the timing, the documentary, the leak, the sudden attention, it's not hard to imagine what people think it could contain. Footage, unreleased material, raw content that hasn't been edited, filtered, or controlled. And if that's what they were after, then this wasn't about theft. It was about control. Control over information, over narrative, over what gets seen and what stays hidden. That's what makes this feel different. Because if someone was trying to retrieve or suppress something before it could spread, then this situation moves into an entirely different category. It becomes intentional. And that's where the tension escalates even further. Because according to another insider account, the situation didn't end cleanly. It didn't resolve in a clear, definitive way. Instead, the story splits. Some versions claim 50 Cent managed to hold his ground long enough for the situation to break apart, whether due to intervention, timing, or something else entirely. Other accounts suggest it ended abruptly, almost like something interrupted it before it could fully unfold. But the most unsettling version, it claims that whoever was involved left without getting what they came for. And if that's true, then this isn't over. Because if the objective was specific, if they were looking for something particular and they didn't find it, then the situation doesn't end there. It lingers. It leaves questions unanswered. And it raises the possibility that whatever this is connected to hasn't fully played out yet. Now, this is the moment where everything spirals beyond control. Because once these details start hitting the internet, fragmented, inconsistent, but compelling, the narrative stopped belonging to any one source. It became public. Threads exploded with theories. People started connecting dots between past feuds, recent posts, and the rumored documentary content. Some believe this is all exaggerated, an internet-driven narrative built on coincidence and speculation. Others believe something real happened, something deeper than what's being shown publicly. And without confirmation, both interpretations continue to exist side by side. That's what makes this so intense. Not certainty, but possibility. Because right now, we don't have clear answers. We have timing. We have patterns. We have fragments of a story that may or may not connect. But what we do know is this. A documentary teaser dropped. Tension followed. An alleged incident occurred. And now the conversation has shifted from entertainment to something much more serious. And if even part of this is true, then what happens next could change everything. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not to someone like 50 Cent, a figure who built an entire career on controlling narratives, provoking reactions, and staying 10 steps ahead of the chaos he creates. Because when he teased that new documentary segment, the assumption was simple. He was in control. He was the one pulling the strings, deciding what the public would see, what would stay hidden, and how the story would unfold. But within hours, that illusion cracked. At first, it didn't look like much, just whispers, quiet conversations happening behind closed doors, a few messages circulating in private group chats. Nothing concrete, nothing confirmed. The kind of background noise that usually fades out before it ever becomes a story. Except this time it didn't fade. It grew. A clip surfaced, short, shaky, hard to make out, but intense enough to grab attention. Then came another layer: audio, distorted voices, fragmented phrases, not clear enough to verify but just clear enough to spark something dangerous: speculation. And suddenly, the narrative shifted. This wasn't just about a documentary anymore. It wasn't about marketing, rollout strategy, or even entertainment. It became something heavier, something that felt real. Because the claims started getting serious. According to multiple circulating reports, none fully confirmed but repeated often enough to gain traction, 50 Cent had allegedly been approached late at night. A quiet moment. No cameras, no entourage, just a brief window where he wasn't surrounded by the usual layers of protection. And that's when it happened. What began as a conversation, at least according to some accounts, escalated quickly, too quickly, voices raised, tension spiked, and then allegedly things turned physical. Now here's where the story takes a darker turn. Early rumors framed it as a robbery. That would have been easy to process. Random, unfortunate, another headline in a long list of celebrity incidents. But that version didn't hold. Because insiders began pointing out inconsistencies. The details didn't line up. The items reportedly taken didn't match what you'd expect from a typical robbery. High-value possessions, left behind, easily identifiable targets, untouched. Instead, the focus seemed specific. Targeted. And that's when a new claim entered the conversation, one that changed everything. A source alleged that during the confrontation, there was one thing being asked about repeatedly. Not money, not jewelry, a drive. Let that sit for a second. Because if true, that detail flips the entire situation on its head. A drive doesn't just hold value, it holds information. Raw, unfiltered, unreleased material. The kind of content that hasn't been edited, framed, or controlled yet. And if 50 Cent really was working on a documentary rumored to expose behind-the-scenes dynamics, industry politics, and unresolved conflicts, then that drive could mean everything. Footage, names, connections, stories that were never meant to go public. And suddenly, this isn't just an incident anymore. It's a potential operation. Because if someone was actively trying to access or stop that content, then the motivation shifts from opportunistic to intentional, from random to strategic. And that's exactly why the internet lost control of the narrative. Within hours, a second wave of leaks hit social media, this time not tied to the documentary, but to the incident itself. A video clip. Grainy, distant, barely visible. But powerful. Figures moving quickly in a dimly lit space. Voices overlapping. Confusion. And then, one moment. A single frame where someone who appears to resemble 50 Cent is seen stumbling backward. Then it cuts. That's it. Seconds of footage. But it was enough. Because now people weren't just hearing about the incident, they were seeing something. And in the age of social media, seeing, even if unclear, is everything. The reaction was immediate. Clips got reposted across platforms. Users slowed it down frame by frame, brightness adjusted, zoom-ins, comparisons, side-by-side analyses, everyone trying to answer the same question. Is it real? But here's the catch. No one could prove it either way. No confirmation. No clear denial. Just uncertainty. And uncertainty is fuel. Because when people don't have answers, they start building their own. That's when another layer surfaced, quieter, but even more unsettling. Someone claiming to have seen the original documentary snippet before it was taken down mentioned something that hadn't been widely discussed. A background detail, easy to miss. A voice, distorted, faint, but according to them, recognizable to the right people. Now that claim alone might not mean much, but paired with everything else, the timing, the alleged confrontation, the supposed search for a drive, it started forming a pattern. A dangerous one. Because if that voice really belonged to someone influential, someone powerful enough to care about how they're portrayed, then this entire situation takes on a new meaning. This isn't just about exposure anymore. It's about control. Control over narrative. Control over perception. Control over what the public is allowed to know. And that's when things escalated again. Late into the night, a screenshot began circulating. No verified source, no confirmed origin, just an image. But the message it contained, chilling, tell him to stop before it gets worse. No name attached, no context provided, just timing right after the incident, right after the leaks. Now whether that message is real or not almost doesn't matter anymore, because by the time it spread, the narrative had already shifted. People weren't asking if things were connected. They were asking how deep it goes. And then came the silence. Because through all of this, clips, leaks, speculation, debates, 50 Cent hasn't said a word. No statement. No denial. No clarification. Nothing. And that might be the most important detail of all. Because if you've followed him over the years, you know he doesn't stay quiet. Not during controversy. Not during conflict. Not when his name is at the center of a storm. Unless there's a reason. Unless he's waiting, planning, or deciding what comes next. Because silence like this doesn't calm situations. It amplifies them. It creates space. And the internet always fills that space with theories, assumptions, and narratives that grow faster than facts. Now, the conversation isn't just about what happened. It's about why it happened. Was this retaliation for something that wasn't supposed to be released? Was the documentary the trigger, or just the surface of something much deeper? And maybe the biggest question of all, what exactly is on that drive? Because if the rumors are even partially true, if there really is unreleased material capable of reshaping narratives, exposing connections, or challenging long-held perceptions, then this situation isn't over. It's just starting. So now, step back and look at the bigger picture. A leaked documentary clip, a sudden confrontation, targeted claims, mysterious footage, unverified warnings, and complete silence from the person at the center of it all. That's not just a viral moment. That's a story still unfolding in real time. And here's the part that should really make you think. If more details come out, if more clips surface, if voices get identified, if someone finally breaks their silence, would it confirm what people are already starting to believe? Or flip the entire narrative again? Because right now, we're not looking at a finished story. We're watching the middle of it. And if history has shown anything, it's this. When control over a story starts slipping, people don't just react. They act. So the real question isn't what already happened. It's what happens next. The silence started as an absence, but very quickly, it turned into something else entirely. Because after the initial wave of claims about the alleged incident involving 50 Cent and the leaked documentary content, there was no official confirmation, no detailed clarification, no named individuals stepping forward to define what was real and what was exaggerated. Just fragments, leaks, screenshots, anonymous posts, and half-heard accounts of conversations that were allegedly happening behind closed doors long before anything reached the internet. Requests were said to have been made, warnings were reportedly issued. Conversations, according to multiple unverified sources, were already circulating in private circles. But publicly, nothing. And that gap between what people were hearing and what was being officially said became the fuel for everything that followed. Because if even a portion of those claims were accurate, then the situation didn't begin with the leak. It had been building quietly for a long time, long before the public ever saw a clip, long before any headline or reaction video. And by the time the internet caught up, it W. As already too late to interpret it calmly. The online environment shifted fast. What started as curiosity, just people trying to understand what happened, turned into analysis, then into concern, then into something much heavier, suspicion. People weren't just reacting anymore. They were investigating in real time. Every frame of the leaked clip was being slowed down, zoomed in on, studied like evidence. Every pause in speech, every shift in tone, every reaction in the background was being reinterpreted as a possible clue. And in that process, the conversation stopped being entertainment. It became forensic. One group began asking a difficult question. If releasing sensitive or revealing material can expose hidden truths, can it also trigger real-world consequences? Another group pushed back immediately. They argued that creating documentaries, exposing stories, and presenting narratives is part of media freedom. That creators shouldn't operate under fear just because their work touches controversial topics. And just like that, the discussion split in two. Freedom of expression on one side, potential backlash and responsibility on the other. Neither side willing to step back. Neither side willing to concede. While that debate escalated online, something else was happening in the background. Timeline breakdowns started appearing everywhere. Forums, comment sections, and discussion threads were filled with people trying to reconstruct the sequence of events down to the minute. When the clip dropped, when reactions started, when alleged movement in private circles supposedly began. But the more people tried to organize the timeline, the more unstable it became. Because one detail kept disrupting every version of the story. The timing. The alleged incident didn't happen days after the leak. It reportedly followed almost immediately. And that proximity created a problem no one could solve. Coincidence felt too simple. Connection felt too serious. So speculation filled the gap. Then came another twist. A message began circulating online, allegedly from someone connected to the production environment, surrounding the documentary project linked to 50 Cent. It wasn't confirmed, it wasn't verified, but it spread quickly enough to become part of the conversation. The message read, "This isn't the full version. The real content hasn't even been touched yet." That single line changed the tone instantly. Because if the public had only seen a fragment, only a preview or partial leak, then the real question wasn't what had already happened. It was what hadn't been seen yet. And that possibility introduced something far more unstable into the conversation. Because partial information causing this level of reaction is one thing. But complete, unreleased material, that raises an entirely different question. What happens if the full version comes out? Would it calm everything down with clarity? Or would it intensify the conflict even further? Even analysts began to hesitate at that point, because nothing about the situation was stabilizing. Every new claim shifted the interpretation of the previous one. Every leak recontextualized the last. And without any official clarification from central figures, the internet was left in a continuous loop, reacting, revising, and rebuilding the narrative over and over again. But through all of it, one thing remained unchanged: the silence from 50 Cent. And that silence became its own kind of signal. Not necessarily proof of anything, not confirmation, not denial, but absence. And in situations like this, absence doesn't reduce speculation, it amplifies it. Because people don't interpret silence neutrally, they interpret it emotionally. They fill it with assumptions, they project meaning onto it. For some, it suggested strategy. For others, it suggested escalation. And for many, it simply meant the story wasn't finished yet. Outside of that silence, the reaction was becoming louder by the hour. What was once an online rumor confined to niche spaces had now become a global conversation. And at the center of it all, the alleged robbery and assault claims tied to the documentary leak. Public opinion split sharply into two competing narratives. On one side were those who questioned the entire story. They pointed out inconsistencies. They questioned why so much of the information was coming from anonymous leaks rather than verified statements. They asked why key details remained unclear if something this serious had truly happened. To them, the situation felt unstable. Too many gaps, too many contradictions, too much reliance on unverified sources. They weren't necessarily denying something happened. They were questioning whether the version being circulated was complete or even accurate. On the other side, however, the interpretation was very different. For them, the incident made sense precisely because of the silence and the ambiguity. They saw the alleged events not as random violence or coincidence, but as a possible consequence of exposure, a reaction to sensitive content being leaked or teased prematurely. In that framing, the silence wasn't suspicious, it was serious. Not everything, they argued, gets addressed publicly, especially not in situations involving influence, reputation, or control over narrative. In that view, actions have consequences, and releasing sensitive material, especially material tied to powerful narratives, can produce real-world pressure. Two interpretations, two completely different worlds, and no agreement in sight. Meanwhile, social media platforms became the main arena for the debate. Hashtags began trending. Reaction clips spread rapidly. Users dissected everything from timestamps to body language to possible connections between unrelated posts. Some tried to reconstruct the entire sequence minute by minute. Others focused only on the leak itself. Others still attempted to connect unrelated historical moments into one continuous narrative. But despite all that effort, no single version of events became universally accepted. Not even close. Industry voices started entering the conversation too, but carefully, indirectly, without naming names. Instead of focusing on the individuals involved, they focused on the pattern. What happens when unreleased or sensitive content surfaces before its intended release? One commentator summarized it in a way that resonated widely. The moment content crosses certain boundaries, it stops being just content. It becomes a liability. And that idea stuck, because it reframed the entire situation away from personalities and toward structure. Control, timing, exposure, consequence. At that point, the story was no longer about a single leak, or a single alleged incident, or even a single project. It became about what happens when narrative control breaks down completely. And now, with no official resolution, no confirmed details, and no clarity from the center of it all, the situation continues to sit in suspension. Unresolved, uncontained, still unfolding. And the longer it stays that way, the more the internet does what it always does. It fills in the silence, one theory at a time. All remaining segments were abruptly marked as restricted, and that single line immediately changed the tone of everything. External exposure has already resulted in unforeseen escalation. That phrase spread across the internet faster than the original leak ever did, because buried inside it was an indirect confirmation that something previously released may have triggered consequences no one was prepared for. And now the question shifted again. Was the leak the cause, or just the moment everything finally snapped? According to sources familiar with the situation, there may still be unreleased portions of the documentary that have never been seen, discussed, or even properly referenced. One segment in particular is being described as contextual footage tied to sensitive interactions. No names, no details, no confirmation of who appears in it, but enough to suggest the material goes far beyond a standard documentary structure. And that possibility changes everything. If even partial exposure of this content caused such a strong reaction, then what happens when the full material surfaces? Was the earlier incident a response to what had already been leaked, or a warning about what was still to come? Behind the scenes, independent chatter suggests that some form of inquiry or review is still ongoing. Nothing official has been confirmed, but the lack of closure is itself fueling speculation. Because in situations like this, silence doesn't feel neutral, it feels loaded. It gets interpreted as strategy, caution, or even preparation for something bigger unfolding out of public view. Meanwhile, 50 Cent's continued silence has become its own focal point. Some believe it's intentional, a calculated pause before a larger reveal. Others think it reflects legal sensitivity or behind-the-scenes restrictions. But without any statement or clarification, the void is being filled entirely by speculation, and that speculation is only expanding the narrative further. At this stage, three threads are dominating the entire conversation: the alleged incident, the leaked documentary content, and the rumored internal responses that suggest escalation behind closed doors. None of them are fully confirmed, yet all of them appear interconnected in the public's interpretation. And that's exactly what makes this situation so unstable. Every new detail doesn't settle the story, it multiplies it. Now the focus has shifted to what happens next. Will the remaining documentary material surface? Will more leaks emerge? Or will an official statement finally break the silence and bring clarity to what actually occurred? There are no clear answers yet. Only fragments, theories, and competing interpretations that continue to evolve in real time. And maybe that's the most important part of all this: nothing has reached a conclusion. Not the incident, not the documentary, and not the public reaction surrounding them. Everything is still in motion, which means the next development, whatever it is, whenever it comes, won't just add to the story. It could completely redefine it. For now, this isn't an ending. It's a pause before the next shift.